Well, hello and welcome to Knife Delights and welcome to a Saturday Stockman Stampede. Yes, that wonderful open tag started by Terry from Terry's Knives and Man Stuff. Make sure and go over and check out Terry's channel. Just a phenomenal channel. I'm really excited. Really excited. You know I like my buck knives and of the slip joint patterns. I love the Buck 301, and I have been trying to detail the history of the evolution of the Buck 301. And what we're looking at right here is version number 2 of the Schrade made Buck 301. Now, before I get into the history, I got a bunch of research I want to get done on this knife. But before we get started with any of that, I'm going to throw it in the sonic cleaner and then throw it into some mineral oil. So stand by. Okay, throw a little Dawn dishwashing liquid in there. Not a lot. I don't think this knife is very dirty, but let's just start from the beginning and go. Got the lid. Here we go. We'll do her for 5 minutes and we'll check it out. Well, let's take a look, see what we got. Well, we did get a little bit of dirt out of it, floating there or sitting there on the bottom. Take the knife out here quick. But, as I suspected, overall, it's pretty clean. We'll set this aside for a minute and get this moved back out of our way. Okay. And we'll just get the knife dried off. And before I go to work, I can throw it here in the mineral oil and give it a nice good soak. Now, Buck always used what was called Velox, or it currently uses a material called Velox on their slip joint knives. And it is very similar in chemical composition to Delrin. So I don't know what Schrade used. I don't know if this is, Delrin or Velox saw cut. But you can see it's kind of white there. And that could be some of the, it'll bleach out is what I want to get to. It'll kind of bleach out. So what mineral oil is good at is getting rid of that bleaching out and soaking in and giving some luster back to these. So here's my mineral oil. And we'll put the knife down in there and we're going to let her soak for many hours. Well, I actually soaked this knife a couple of times. I soaked it and wiped it down, worked the blades, cleaned it out just a little bit, threw it back in the mineral oil for another day. Got her all wiped down again. She's looking pretty clean, although we still do get some dirty oil coming out of here. That's going to happen for a while. So, like any other knife, clean them pivots out, work the blade some, and you'll keep working that dirty oil out. And then if you don't want to, soak it again, throw the whole knife in. You can get something like this from LCK Knives on Etsy. It's just mineral oil and a nice little applicator here, and you can just put your oil in the pivots, not having to soak the whole knife again, because it's a pain to wipe off. So as I mentioned before, I believe this is another version of a Schrade contracted Buck 301 knife, and I want to go over the history of the Schrade made Buck models here just momentarily. As we can see, when we look at the 300 series of Buck knives and their history, we can see that Schrade was contracted to make the 301 starting in 1967, and it looks like it last appeared in a catalog in 1972. But after a few years of Schrade having the contract, Buck switched the contract over to Camillus, and the reasons will be obviously, or obvious why they did that here in just a minute. So as I said, there's 3 different versions, and version 1 stands out because it has these grooved bolsters to them. And you can see this one down here does not. So what distinguishes version 2 from 3? Well, I know this is 3 because on version 2 they have buck stamped on the secondary blades. And you can see this one does not have that. So that tells me this is version 3, so I'm still missing one version. Now we can go over some of the general characteristics on how you can identify if you have a Schrade contracted buck 301 versus a Camillus. The difference between a buck made, when Buck started making them in around 1986, is Buck always used just a little cat's eye or crescent nail nick, and both Schrade and Camillus uses the long nail pole. So how are you going to tell the difference whether it's Schrade or Camillus? Well, a few things to look for is you look at the bolsters, and if you don't see a pin there, that would indicate that it is a Schrade made. And the reason is Schrade used the Swindon system to assemble the knife, and we'll get into the Swindon system here in just a moment. So if you see that there's no pin in the bolsters, there's no model number on these, but it does have the traditional buck oval inlay there, or shield, and they do have steel bolsters. And I just wanted to point out here, the seller on this one, I wondered if this were carbon steel springs, because look at the patina that's on that. And that's one of the reasons why I didn't put it in the rust remover, because I did not want that patina removed. I wanted, that is just beautiful patina there. Yeah. So now we get back to the question of why did Buck switch from Schrade to Camillus? Well, it's because of the Swindon system. And Dave Swindon, who worked for the Imperial Knife Companies, which Schrade was a part of, you know, there was that whole great big conglomerate. Dave Swindon worked there and filed for a patent. Dave lived from 1932 to 2006. And Schrade began using the Swindon system around, 1961. The problem with the Swindon system, and as you can see here in the pictures, you can see how that pin is, or makes it a key. It's rounded off. You're looking in that bottom picture there. So then that rounded, I don't know, how do you explain it? The head of that pin then slips in to the cover, and then you just slide the cover down and it locks it into place. And one of the reasons why they came up with this method was supposedly it was to save production costs. It takes a lot of time and effort to make sure your holes are drilled perfectly in the bolsters, and then you got to get the pins in, and then actually pin them down, and then smooth them off, grind them down, sand them down. That's very labor intensive. So it is an advantage probably in the manufacturing process for a new knife to put it together that way. The problem is when it comes time to warranty it. The knife is very difficult to take apart because of that Swindon key. And basically the only way you can repair it is you take it apart, do away with this Swindon key, and then you actually have to go back, drill holes into the bolsters, and actually pin it the way knives are traditionally put together. And Buck found that very labor intensive for warranty purposes. Just of note, if you would happen to find one of these Schrade made and it looks like there's a pin in there, you might possibly have a Schrade made or Schrade contracted buck knife that was sent in for warranty repair, and they did exactly what I just described. They fixed it, but they had to repin it, using the traditional pinning system. And I'll insert a picture here of the actual patent. You can pause it and study it all you want. If you look up in the upper right hand corner of the diagram, it shows patent number 2,000,900 $977,678, and it was filed January in 1960, and it looks like it was approved April 4th, 1961. There's more diagrams that go along with that and a long explanation of why they applied for this patent. So if you go to Google patents and type in that patent number, you should be able to find more information on that if you are inclined to want to get into the nuts and bolts or out into the weeds like I do. It's been very exciting for me to get another version of the Schrade contracted Buck 301. Excited to get just another example of how the Buck 301 evolved through the years. I've actually got another one coming here in a week or so. Not a Schrade made one, but another Buck 301 that shows some differences. It's just fascinating to me. Now I do have at least one Camillus contracted 301. Now I need to start studying those, see the differences. I think there's a couple different versions of the Camillus made ones also. So yeah, a lot to learn yet, but I just love this history and this knife history. Thanks for watching and nerding out with me, as it will. I don't know what it is, but the 301, it just enthralls me, and I look forward to learning more and more about them every time I get a new one. So just one last little glance here. Here we go, side by side. Yeah. So until next time, have a very delightful day.